has asked for aid from France, Italy, and Germany. Greek ruins that are almost 3,000 years old are in danger of being burnt down. Fires surround Athens, the capital city. The hillsides are ablaze, and there seems to be no end in sight. Entire villages have been destroyed. There has been no rain for 2 months, and the trees are so dry that just the heat from an approaching fire causes them to explode into flames. Police have arrested 3 suspected arsonists. One suspect, oddly enough, was still complaining about the 2004 Olympics. He had applied to carry the torch into the stadium and light the fire to officially start the games. His application was ignored. "You have to be somebody," was the reply he got when he called the Olympic Committee in Athens. "And you're not. You're nobody," an official told him. The man was in jail for 3 years for trying to blow up the committee's headquarters. Yesterday, police caught him walking away from a new fire with an empty gas can in his hands. "I'm nobody, huh?" he told the police. "Well, I'm somebody now." I was sound asleep. My grandfather appeared in a dream. He asked why I had never visited him and Grandma at the cemetery. He said that even my mom hadn't visited since October 4th, Grandma's birthday. He told me that when I was young, I had walked out into a pond and slipped underwater. He had rescued me. He said Grandma was supposed to be watching me, but that she had gotten sick all of a sudden and was throwing up. It was probably the fresh blackberries they had picked and eaten earlier. Grandma had a bad stomach. My parents were out on a boat in the pond. They did not know that Grandpa had saved me until they got back to shore. I was in a towel, and my clothes were drying on bushes. My brown and white Buster Brown shoes were also soaked. I was only 3 years old, Grandpa said. My parents were angry at first, but when they saw that Grandma was still feeling sick, they forgave her. Grandpa told me that we had a picnic after that. The 4 of us ate some chicken, potato salad, and homemade cookies. We drank lemonade. Then Grandpa took me for a walk in the woods. I sat on his shoulders. I saw some daisies, and we picked them. When we returned, I presented 3 daisies to Mom and 3 to Grandma, who was finally feeling better. Grandpa said to bring some daisies to the grave site. Then I woke up. The next day, I called my mom. "Do you remember me walking into the pond and Grandpa rescuing me?" "My God, who told you about that?" "You mean it really happened?" "Yes, but your father and I never told you about it because Grandma swore us to silence. Even though it wasn't her fault, she felt that she had failed in her responsibility and never wanted you to know about it." "My goodness, that was so long ago. Who told you this?" "Mom, did I go for a walk with Grandpa and return with daisies for you and Grandma?" "Okay, I get it. You and your dad are playing some kind of prank. Okay, it's very funny. Now quit it." "This is no prank, Mom. Grandpa told me this in a dream last night." "It still sounds like a prank." "No, I'm serious. He told me that Grandma had a reaction to blackberries. He said I was wearing brown and white Buster Brown shoes. He said I gave you and Grandma daisies." "Oh my God, your father would never remember all this. It must be Daddy. Did he say anything about visiting his grave site?" "Yes, that was his problem. He wanted me to visit them. He also said that you had not visited since Mom's birthday 6 years ago?" "Well, not. I've got to get over there right now." "Wait for me. I'm coming with you, and I've got to bring those daisies. Maybe we'd better start going every year, huh, Mom?" "Yes. There's no telling what Grandpa might tell you next time." Roy wanted to visit Egypt 2 years ago, but while he was checking out different tour packages, an airplane crashed into the Atlantic. The plane was an Egypt Air flight from New York to Cairo. It had no sooner gotten airborne than it dove straight down into the ocean, killing all on board. There was a great deal of investigation into the crash, but the final conclusion made after recovering the black box was that the co-pilot had decided to take his life along with all the passengers and crew. Pat told Roy to forget about flying to Egypt. As his wife of 50 years, she wouldn't permit it. If he wanted to see the pyramids, she said, he could rent a video or Google the pyramids online. 2 years went by and no further crashes occurred. One day Roy told Pat that he was going to Egypt with or without her approval. He asked her if she wanted to go with him. She said no, thank you. She didn't have a death wish like someone I know. Roy said that the plane crashed 2 years ago. She worried too much. He said he was also making a side trip to Israel. Pat said, "Go ahead. I'll call the funeral parlor so they know you'll be dropping by." Roy laughed. He said there was a greater chance of dying in a car accident in their own neighborhood than of being killed by terrorists in Egypt or Israel. "Yes," Pat said, "but we have to drive around our neighborhood to do our errands. We don't have to go to Egypt and Israel. You're just tempting fate." In New York, the residents at a senior center have been receiving free donuts and other baked goods for years. The sweets are donated by bakeries and other shops that have leftovers that are not quite fresh enough to sell. The seniors devour the sweets, but the city council has decided that these sweets are no good for the seniors. It just passed a law forbidding free day-old sweets for the senior center. We want our seniors to live as long as possible, and these sweets can only contribute to obesity. With obesity come high blood pressure, circulation problems, and diabetes. So we are doing this for their own good, said Carl Rove, a city council member. The senior citizens are having none of this. They immediately called Rove and other council members to protest this ban. "Who are these people to tell us what to eat?" asked Doug Fairbanks, a resident at the center. "I'll bet every one of them has a donut several times a week. Where do they get this attitude? They act like they are our parents. Instead, they are elected officials who are supposed to do the will of the people. And there isn't one person in the senior center who has complained about the free donuts. If they're concerned about seniors, are they going to prohibit all the seniors in the whole town from eating donuts? They can't just pick on us if they're interested in the health of all seniors. People get a little bit of power, and it goes straight to their heads. We are starting a petition to recall all the council members who voted for this law." May was hoping to broker cigarette lighters in America. Her friend said that Mr. Wang was a big manufacturer in China. She gave May Mr. Wang's phone number. May called Mr. Wang and invited him to Los Angeles. She arranged several meetings between Mr. Wang and some U.S. wholesalers. Because he did not speak English, she was the interpreter at the meetings. Mr. Wang promised to give May a commission for whatever business deal was made and for all future orders. The first 3 meetings were unproductive. The last meeting was with a Chinese wholesaler. He spoke Chinese, so there was no need for May to interpret his remarks. She sat there throughout the meeting and listened. The 2 men discovered that they both had grown up in Chengdu, a large city in southwest China. At meeting's end, no deal was made. Everyone shook hands. May and Mr. Wang walked out to her car. Then Mr. Wang said that he had forgotten something. He excused himself and walked back to the office. May waited a moment. Then, suspicious, she snuck back to the office and heard the 2 men making a deal behind her back. Mr. Wang was cutting her out of her commission. May went back out to her car and waited. Mr. Wang was whistling as he returned to the car. He apologized for making her wait. She said it was no problem. Then she drove Mr. Wang back to his hotel. He thanked her for her help and said he was returning to China the next day. She didn't say anything about what she had overheard. She went home and tried not to cry about what had just happened. She must be strong. Bill parked his car on the residential street. The street used to be safe, but now there were frequent reports in the weekly paper about break-ins. He put the club on his steering wheel and made sure that nothing of value, not even a pair of cheap sunglasses, was visible through the car windows. He got out of the car and started the uphill walk. The mountain trail was mostly narrow for the first 2 miles. Only 2 people could walk side by side. When the trail got close to the edge of the mountainside, It was best if people walked single file. Several years ago, an experienced hiker, walking alone, slipped and fell to his death. The trail went past a small lake created by a dam and then broadened as it went up into the heart of the mountain, away from cliffs. When Bill got to first camp, he stopped by the small stream to look for fish or frogs. Suddenly, he heard a sinister rattling sound. Then he felt a sharp bite on his calf. He turned around in time to see a rattler slithering off. There was nothing to do now but walk back down to his car. He had no cell phone with him. He would remember to bring it next time, if there was a next time. Should he walk slowly so the poison would spread slowly? Or should he walk fast so he could get to his car and get medical help faster? Perhaps he'd meet someone on the way down. A simple walk, he thought. It was just going to be a simple walk up a mountain trail. Tamara Smith sliced open an eggplant. The seeds were arranged in the likeness of Elvis's profile. "Oh my God!" Tamara screamed. She was the King's biggest fan. She had all his CDs and all the DVDs of his movies. She knew everything about the artist from Mississippi. She had been to his birthplace and to his memorial, Graceland, in Memphis. She had never actually seen him live, yet she worshipped him. She felt that she was his soulmate because they were both born on January 8th. She always claimed that Elvis would be alive today if she could have contacted him that fateful day. She had had a strange feeling that morning in her own bathroom. She sensed that there was danger for Elvis in his bathroom. She suspected that he might slip in the tub or maybe accidentally electrocute himself with his hairdryer. But she wasn't sure. All she knew was that Elvis must not use his bathroom that day. She dialed Memphis 411, but information told her that his number was not listed. She called the Memphis police, but they said she would have to get in line behind all the other crank callers. She called her cousin who lived in Memphis, but her cousin was out. She almost died when she saw the TV news that night, August 16th, the saddest day of her life. I was right, she kept repeating to herself. If only she had gotten through to poor Elvis. Now she had this eggplant. It could mean only one thing. Elvis was trying to communicate with her. She wrapped the eggplant in saran wrap and put it in her refrigerator. The next day, she was going to visit Mabel, her palm reader medium manicurist, to have a seance. Boy, this is the worst weed I've ever had, Wesley thought, even though it smelled great. He'd rolled 2 joints, smoked them both, and still didn't feel high. He'd heard about some super weed that gets people so high that they think they're straight. Maybe this was super weed. Nah, he thought, this is just crap. His best buddy had ripped him off. There was only one thing to do, call the police. Wesley told the police his problem. They said they would be right over. He went to the front door and unlocked it. Slowly, he printed Buster's phone number and address on a cigarette paper. He put it into the big baggie of grass. He wondered if his call was going to make TV news, or maybe the front page of the newspaper. Good citizen, turns in drug dealer. Wow, the city might make him an honorary deputy sheriff. He lit another joint. Maybe the third one would be the charm. He heard the car doors closing and the footsteps approaching. All right, he thought. He wondered if they had brought a television crew with them. Maybe he'd make the 11 o'clock news. The police were very polite. They thanked him for Buster's phone number and address. Then they arrested Wesley. What for? He protested. For possessing more than 28 grams of pot, an officer replied. But this isn't pot. It's more not than pot. Why do you think I called you? I got ripped off. Well, we'll see about that after the lab analyzes it. If you're both lucky, you did get ripped off. It was a hot, sunny day. The waves off Santa Barbara were almost 3 feet high because of a distant Pacific storm. Surfers were having fun. Then the fun ended. One surfer started yelling. Surfers on the beach saw him swinging his arms. He went underwater. Then he came back up, shouting for help. He was in big trouble, said one woman on shore. She called 911. He was still shouting and fighting. They could not see a shark, but they knew the surfer was being attacked by one. Again, the surfer went under. 4 surfers hopped onto their boards and swam rapidly out to the surfer. By the time they got to him, he was alone. The shark had given up on the taste of the rubber wetsuit and the battle that the surfer had put up. The 24-year-old man was groaning in pain, but he was still alive. The surfers put him on a board and paddled back to shore. "I don't think he's going to make it," said someone on the beach. "Look at that leg." A helicopter arrived shortly afterward. Paramedics hopped out and examined the victim. They thanked the surfers and the woman for their aid and put the man into the chopper. A hospital spokesman said an hour later that the surfer would survive. He was in fair condition. Meanwhile, because there was nothing they could do, and because the waves were still good, most of the surfers were out on their boards.